Hey there, been a while. I want to talk to you a little bit today about sexuality and medical problems. Um, Not a lot of research, specific research is done in this area. And I think maybe you can see that there's a theme that develops or has developed, and we've talked about it. I've talked about it with you before, and that's in the realm of reluctance. People who are therapists, counselors who are reluctant to discuss sexuality stuff with people, and they have the same needs for that sort of thing that anybody else does with any other mental deal going on. So this textbook and other articles and other literature you'll read about human sexuality tends to keep bringing that up. It's almost like they're trying to sell it. I don't mean that meanly. Trying to get people interested enough into it and fulfilling a role that it's really unfulfilled at the moment. So this kind of piggybacks on that. This chapter 15, opens with kind of a loose discussion about, hey guys, we need more of you guys out there that are willing to talk about this stuff. So let's move beyond that and let's do talk about this medical stuff. How does the medical side of your life interfere with your sexuality, with your intimate relationships? Um, there's an interesting thing that's pointed out. Diseases that are at one time were just a death sentence. They were totally fatal. Or extremely debilitating, as your textbook points out, are managed now medically better than they were years ago, even 10 years ago. So what does that do? Keeps you around longer, hopefully in better shape, but not always. But its intent is to add quality of life. And with that in mind, if I'm medicated for some kind of a disease, and I can still enjoy aspects of my life that maybe in the beginning of the disease weren't there, then it's going to have an effect on everything, including your sexuality. So a better quality of life, um, maybe even better relationships. I don't know. We won't get into that psychological end of it. Sometimes bad relationships are affected. It's almost like, well, if I do this, that's going to happen, and if that happens, then it's going to cause me to do this. Kind of a cycle. So there's a movement, somewhat of a movement, to identify the needs, and as I pointed out in the beginning of this, still need more people to do this. Giving somebody literature that explains what's going on doesn't necessarily lead to betterment of the situation. So, sex and illness, that's our concern. There are a lot of things that can cause a failure in the sexuality area. We're treating a disease of some sort, some medical disease, and what we run into is both a psychological impact and the effect of the treatments on a person's ability to be intimate, and that's a concern that is not new, but becoming more and more prevalent because of the medications we have. And is that a good quality of life? Something to think about. Now, there's a fellow, Roland, uh, I think that's a male, doesn't matter, a researcher by the last name Roland, who put together what he calls a typology of illness. He, she. And it's a conceptualization is the wording used of a person or a couple's illness experience, and I think it's a very good way to sort of not really quantify per se, but to categorize what you're dealing with here. So let's run over this real quickly. Maybe you can read it, but I want to point it out to you. So let's begin with number one, acute illness versus gradual onset. And an illness with acute onset is usually unpredictable, uh, and it may be more challenging for a person to deal with because they don't know what to expect from one minute to the next. That's obvious, as opposed to a gradual illness where you slowly but surely lose abilities. MS is a good example of that. Begins and then you slowly but surely deteriorate. Such a sad disease. The course of an illness, um, progressive, constant, or relapsing. Uh, what does this do? It creates anxiety in both the sufferer of the illness and their partner. Because again, it's like this acute business. You don't know what to expect from one minute to the next. So you have this anticipatory kind of an attitude toward this thing. And then what's the end result of that? Most often it's going to be anxiety and depression for that matter. An expected prognosis, and where we pretty much know what we think we're going to hear. Oh gosh, I've got this symptom, and this is a well discussed, well known symptom. So I know that eventually I'm going to get the word. And by the diagnosis time, maybe the illness has progressed to the point where you're incapable of performing normal day-to-day activities, including your job, uh, among many other things. So I can't perform these tasks. It's going to affect my attitude and my sense of well-being, which will probably have an effect on my sexuality. And then we deal with the practical, the degree of incapacitation. Uh, am I physically incapacitated? Am I cognitively incapacitated? Is there problems with sensory function? Um, just simple movement. How about my energy level? Has my appearance changed? That plays a role. Some people are destroyed mentally by the way their appearance changes due to a disease. Uh, Particularly if there's some sort of a surgery and something is removed, something changes, then that sometimes changes your uh, self-image view. You're not satisfied with that, and it affects your self-esteem. Um, the effects of illnesses on relationships and on sexuality. You're primarily able to summarize this with one word, and that's adjustment. And then you may follow that by or lack of. Can I adapt and can I adjust to this new way of life? Or am I struggling with that? And by the way, not only you, but your loved one, your partner, what's the effect on them? So I have this chronic illness, and maybe you're less able to deal with it than I am, and I'm the one that has it. So this is going to have an effect on our relationship, the quality of the relationship, the ongoing relationship, or it could be a termination point because of this illness. There's also the consideration of financial problems, social changes, so on and so forth. All of these things that are peripherals that people sometimes don't even stop and think about when they first confront a situation like this, that become very important once you find yourself in this position. You may be the caregiver of a person who's very ill. That's going to affect a lot of things in your life, including your energy level, including your motivation. And that's in addition to what you're having to deal with and what this person that you're caring for has to deal with. The book points out an overview of the effect of certain things. It talks about specifics a little bit, and it goes into a discussion about what cancer does. I don't need to lecture you on all of that. You can read about it, but it's common sense. That's one of the worst things on earth is cancer. But one area that's not very well discussed, and I want to bring it before you, is chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia actually is described as a disease of the central nervous system, and it's commonly associated with CFS, but but not always. So if I have chronic fatigue syndrome, many times I will report fibromyalgia, but that's not always the case. But here's the important thing. Because of the areas that are affected, joint pain, fatigue, and depressed mood, that's going to have an effect on your motivation to do anything. And here's a little weird thing about it. There are medical doctors out there who say that it doesn't exist. I know a fellow that has this condition, and if you tell him it doesn't exist, he'll probably pop you upside your head because I've seen the guy suffer. I don't know why the medical profession, I say the medical profession, I don't know why some medical doctors would say, nah, that's all in your mind. It's not all in your mind. Pain can be all in your mind, but fibromyalgia is serious business. I've known several people with that. Maybe you have too. Chronic fatigue syndrome came around, what decade was that? Oh my gosh. Maybe late 70s, early 80s, I'm not sure. And it's um, how's a good way to put it? It's mental fatigue, but it includes physical fatigue. And it's not due to going out working out or whatever, or studying for 3 hours for an exam. There doesn't seem to be any source for it, which makes it almost impossible to treat. There's no diagnosis in terms of how it, where it came from. So, what do you do with it? The characterizations are persistent or intermittent physical and mental fatigue. And if you say, well, if I need, I'll stay home, take a nap today, and I'll be better. No, it doesn't work that way. So it's divided, of course, into symptoms, and you just have to deal with each symptom. It can get a serious impaired memory. It can affect your lymph nodes. You can have muscle pain. You can have headaches. And this is kind of where the sometimes they fibromyalgia and CFS are comorbid, but I don't, I'm not too sure that that's the case in every case. So, to wrap this up, diabetes, obviously it's going to have an effect on circulation, so on and so forth. And neurological disorders, spinal cord lesions, your book points that out. Parkinson's disease, stroke. I've had a couple of friends that have had some serious strokes. Had a sister who had a massive stroke and killed her. So that's not a toy. That's something to take seriously. But if you have a stroke, it can incapacitate you to the point where your whole life is totally different now. So just an overview of what we're dealing with, Chapter 15. I won't do another lecture on this. This will be your lecture on this business for the week. So hope you get something out of this. Take care.